Came about today through a special initiative on heirs property that is funded by J.P. Morgan Chase through a national organization called the National Community Stabilization Trust. And we have a representative from the National Community Stabilization Trust with us today. I don't see him in the room at the moment, but Jordan Blackstrom is with us from the National Community. Is he here? Is he waving? There he is. There's Jordan. Thank you for traveling to be with us today. We are grateful for their support in making this possible. So this special initiative provided support to HouseATL to have the consulting services of Ashley Edwards, who was also just waved a moment ago, now has disappeared. Our modest Ashley Edwards has been working with us for a year on heirs property issues, and she designed and organized today's session. And since she's one of those modest people, she didn't design herself into a speaking role. So if you all could please, just acknowledge and thank Ashley afterwards. You can thank her now too for all her hard work on this heirs property challenge. Today's event is also being live streamed and videotaped, so y'all be on your best behavior with the support that we have through J.P. Morgan Chase and the National Community Stabilization Trust. So before we move into our topic, we wanted to give an opportunity to our platinum sponsors to make some remarks. This whole event today, the luncheon session, everything would not be possible without our key sponsors. And so we're really pleased that our platinum sponsors chose to help make this available today to the community. So first, we're going to hear from the president of Atlanta Realtors Association, Chris Burrell. And as Chris makes his way up, I want to note that several HouseATL members are members of Atlanta Realtors Association or other realtors associations around the metro area. And I've found our realtor friends to be super generous with their time, energy, and expertise. And I'm really grateful to Atlanta Realtors Association in particular for their support. So thank you so much for being with us, Chris.
Good afternoon. I hope you are enjoying your lunch. We are honored to be a platinum sponsor this year. On behalf of the Atlanta Realtors Association, it is our honor to be a sponsor of the Dream Home Expo. Today is about opportunity. Opportunity for families to learn, to plan, and take real steps towards building a stable future through home ownership. As realtors, our members are more than just professionals helping you buy or sell your homes. We are trusted advisors who walk alongside you, buyers and sellers through this entire process. In fact, for many of you, it is the most important moment in your life, buying your home. From navigating financing options to advocating for fair housing, our realtors are deeply committed to making sure every client is informed, protected, and supported on their journey. Here in DeKalb County, like in many parts of Metro Atlanta, we face real challenges around housing affordability, availability, and stability. Rising cost and limited inventory make it harder for families to enter the market, while aging housing stock and infrastructure add another layer of complexity. But these challenges also create an opportunity for partnerships between realtors, community leaders, lenders, and homeowners to create solutions to keep our neighborhoods strong and vibrant. One issue especially close to our hearts is family property legacy, heirs property ownership, which is what our next panel will talk about. Too many families lose generational wealth because land and homes passed down without a clear title become vulnerable to outside investors and legal disputes. Protecting heirs property is not only about preserving family history, it's about preserving equity, stability, and a promise of ownership for generations to come. Realtors play an important part in that role here too, by educating families, guiding them to resources, and advocating for policies that keep home ownership a path to wealth, not a barrier. So today, I want to thank each of you for being part of the Expo. Whether you are here as a future homeowner, a current homeowner, or a partner in this work, know that Realtors across DeKalb and Atlanta are committed to serving you with integrity, expertise, and care. Together, we can ensure that homeownership remains a cornerstone of strong families and safe and thriving communities. Thank you again, and I look forward to enjoying our panel.
Thank you so much, Chris. Next, we're going to hear from an esteemed elected official who is also a platinum sponsor today, Dr. LaDena Bolton, who's Commissioner for Super District 7. We're grateful she chose to support us and make today possible, and she has also generously decided to share her time today with Alan Mitchell, who's the Director of DeKalb County Community Development, in order for you to get some information about services that are available to you through DeKalb County's Community Development Department. Dr. Bolton.
Thank you so much. And as Natallie said, I am going to yield my time to Mr. Alan Mitchell, but first I wanted to take an opportunity to acknowledge some of the folks in the room out of DeKalb County who would be an asset to you when you're trying to actually get your first home, your dream home, or sustain the home that you're in. First, I want to acknowledge Mr. Alan Ferguson, who is our Chief Housing Officer, our first Chief Housing Officer in DeKalb County, and I believe he's the incoming chairman for HouseATL. If I got that title wrong, please excuse me, but he is here with us. In addition to Irvin Johnson, he's our tax commissioner, so once you purchase your home, you will give him your tax dollars for your property. And we also have two youth commissioners here with us, DeKalb County Youth Commissioners, Denise Cato out of Arabia Mountain High School, yes, give her applause, as well as John Green, and he attends Chamblee High School. They're volunteering with us today in District 7. All right, so Mr. Alan Mitchell is going to give you guys some resources for the residents or folks who want to get a home in DeKalb County.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon. I have 2 quick points to make, and I'll be very brief. The DeKalb County government offers 2 things. One, home buyer programs, as well as options to stay in your home. The first program was going to be, we have a down payment assistance program. You heard a lot about that today, but the one we have is on steroids. It's actually a concept where we use a program called NSP, Neighborhood Stabilization Program. There are federal dollars where foreclosed homes and abandoned homes are actually acquired, rehabbed, and sold. So as a home buyer, you don't have to actually look for a home, nor do you have to go to the labor of rehabbing homes that you might get through down payment assistance. In our case, we do all that for you and offer you up to $24,000 toward down payment and closing costs. So if you compare that to traditional down payment assistance programs, it's drastically different. You don't have to go to the labor of rehabbing a home. So we've done over $30 million of expenditures since I've been associated with the program, which is going back a number of years. And we currently have about 5 to 7 homes that we currently have under rehab that will be available for sale. So that's a really good deal for someone looking for a home using a down payment assistance. Second point, also there are areas where DeKalb County will help you stay in your home. The first program we have is called DMAP, which is the DeKalb Mortgage Assistance, where if you're having issues of trouble with your mortgage, can't pay your mortgage, we can go up to a cap of $10,000 in paying arrears for you. This program is administered by Atlanta Legal Aid, Our House, and Urban League, where you can make phone calls, go to our website and get the telephone numbers to assist you with delinquent mortgages. In addition, we also have Metro Fair Housing, a preeminent nonprofit who also is on the contract with the county to help with issues with fair housing, loan modifications, things like that, where there's overt discrimination. So we can also direct you to Metro Fair. And lastly, we have a landlord legal aid under contract with DeKalb County, and they will help you with foreclosure issues, as well as difficulty paying your mortgage, and also simply buying a home. So it's a legal firm. They're here today. If you come to our table, which is at T2, you can get handouts to all the programs I've mentioned. So with that, I'll conclude saying DeKalb is really concerned about helping you get a home, but more importantly, helping you keep a home. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, and I just want to reiterate again, if you didn't hear anything else, what you should have heard him say is that we have money to give you to support you in getting into a home or sustaining the home that you're in. And again, our table is at T1, is that T1? T2, but yes, T2, immediately when you walk into the door, you'll see our table. We do have resources, you can sign up, and also our Chief of Staff, Lavisa Zanders Johnson, is here as well if you have any questions or need any support, and thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you both so much, Dr. Bolton and Mr. Mitchell. Hope you all will take advantage of those resources. So now we are going to begin our panel for our plenary session. I am going to turn the microphone over to a journalist from Canopy Atlanta, LaJoy Lane, who is here with us, giving her time to moderate our panel, and she will be introducing her panelists. Welcome up, LaJoy. We're going to do a little rearranging of chairs here.
All right, I'm going to start over here while they assemble the chairs a little bit and introduce myself. Hi, I'm LaJoy Lane. I'm a real estate professional who focuses on property management and marketing. More recently, I've had the ability to kind of connect the analytical side of real estate that I really enjoy with the more creative side by working with, as she mentioned, Canopy Atlanta. They are a local community journalism group, and with them, I had the ability to do some investigative journalism around rental changes and history in the Tri-Cities area and how that was really affecting legacy residents as well as the community moving forward. So I'm really excited to be here for this because I think overall this is a really timely conversation. And I'm going to join my fellow panelists over here now. Next slide, please. Okay, perfect. So what I was saying was that I think this is a really timely conversation because, as many of you know, next year we will have the FIFA World Cup here, and that will definitely affect the real estate market here. It will change desirability, it will change urgency, and it's important that we're having these conversations now because you don't want to have to be figuring out how to A, protect your property or how to navigate the sphere of heirs property while potentially in crisis or even worse, unfortunately, grieving. So I think it's awesome that we have these panelists here. They are all experts in this area. They will offer us perspective. I think that will cover a 360 to give you a really good foundation about heirs property. So I'm going to do a little highlights for our panelists because they all, like I said, have really deep knowledge of this topic. And I will start with Kim Hughes from KG Hughes and Associates. You have a specialty in estate planning as well as real estate around residential and commercial. And I think Kim will be able to really speak to the real implications of a lack of education in this area and how that affects families. We also have Sharon, Ms. Sharon Baker Boykin, who has been an attorney for over 40 years. And a fun fact about Ms. Sharon is that she's the first probate court administrator in DeKalb County. So she has definitely seen the impact of heirs property and is going to offer us a lot of knowledge around that. And then we have Colin Galargi. He's with the City of Atlanta, Office of Housing Policy. He's definitely seen the downstream effects of a lack of education as well, and I think he'll complement Kim really well in that area. And also just give us a little bit more about how missing pieces like just not having updated addresses with the local county tax commissioners and different offices where you won't even receive important notices that would have made the difference in you understanding where you were in the process of heirs property. So overall, we really hope you walk away empowered and educated and prepared to both protect yourself and those in your community. So I will also give you both, all three of you, a little chance to speak a little bit more, because I feel like I hit your highlights, but I know there's much more. So if you guys want to take maybe like 30 seconds or so to add a little bit more context. Oh.
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. As was stated, I'm Kim Hughes with KG Hughes and Associates. I'm a practicing attorney in the areas of real estate, closing transactions, both residential and commercial, and also estate planning. I've been practicing for over 25 years, closer to 30, probably in the metro Atlanta area, and very excited to be here today. As through my practice, I've come across more and more, I'll call them opportunities to address heir properties issues in my real estate closing transactions, and allows me to better equip and prepare my clients in estate planning because of some of the issues that I've seen that we've had to address. So I'm very excited to be here. Not only is it my profession, but it really is becoming my heartstrings, and to be able to impact and be a part of organizations like HouseATL and support them and other organizations in this space, because it's becoming more and more prevalent in Metro Atlanta and really around the nation. So I'm happy to be here today, and thank you for the opportunity. Wonderful. Can everyone hear me? I think you have to turn. You see it? Yeah.
Everyone hear me now? Okay. I am also happy to be here. My name is Sharon Baker Boykin, and as our moderator said, I've been an attorney for 40 years. Wow. Time has flown by. But this is also an area that I pay a lot of attention to. I've been in private practice, I've been a judge, I've been a prosecutor, and I was the first probate court administrator in DeKalb, and this was back when COVID started. So I'm looking forward to the discussion too, but I want each one of you to pat yourselves on the back for just being in the room, because you're going to hear hopefully some good information, and you may be the ones to protect your family's legacy of property, not only yours, but your parents, your grandparents, great-grandparents, and we're going to touch upon all of that.
Check, check. Wonderful. Can y'all hear me? Cool. So my name is Colin DeLargy. I am a senior policy analyst in the mayor's office of the city of Atlanta. I work with a group called the Housing Innovation Lab, where we focus a lot on the mayor of Atlanta's goal of building or preserving 20,000 affordable housing units by the end of the decade. Now, what does that have to do with heirs property? I don't have 40 years of experience in this, unfortunately. In fact, just a few years ago, if you had said heirs property to me, I would have said, that's the stuff, like that's all the air on top of the house, right? That goes all the way up. But no, HEIRS I learned. And really, I've come to be, to come into this world because a lot of the work that we do in the mayor's office has to do with neighborhood stabilization, has to do with housing outcomes for folks. And what we notice time and time again, I'll get into this in a little bit, is when you have things like heirs property, when it's not clear who owns the home after someone passes, a lot goes wrong. And those downstream effects impact not just the family, but the neighborhood, but the city. So that's kind of how I got into it, and I'm very excited to learn and tell.
Awesome. So I will agree with you too. I also did not have a full concept of heirs property before digging a little bit deeper, but I would love if you could actually start us off with that. Give us a good definition so people have a grounding of what that is.
So the lawyers on the line will have a better definition, but the way that we think about heirs property, I took some notes, so forgive me as I look down, but usually we think of heirs property as what arises when the state of Georgia is unclear about who owns your home after you pass. Now, oftentimes it's thought, oh, that means I passed away without a will. That's not entirely true. Some wills are not totally clear in and of themselves, but it's a good rule of thumb, is if you pass away without an estate plan that you decide and that you communicate to the state and that you file, then you risk having an heirs property situation. And I'm sure Ms. Sharon here will say it, but you actually already have an estate plan if you own a home, but who decides it?
And we're going to talk about that too. I don't know if you want me to jump in now.
Yeah, please.
So let me give you all an example, because I'll be using this example as I kind of answer some questions. Suppose here in Georgia, this couple, Denzel and Sharon, buy a house. I didn't say Washington, right? But they bought a house in Georgia. And how many of you know that there are two ways this couple can buy the house in Georgia? It can be just the couple's name on the deed, or it says Denzel and Sharon with rights of survivorship. And when I say that, most people say, I don't know what my deed says. You need to find out. Because let's say Denzel and Sharon have been married before, they have children in other relationships, and now they're married with children in their relationship. If, let's say the property they bought in Georgia just had Denzel and Sharon's name on it, and Denzel died first, Georgia wants to know who are Denzel's heirs, because if he doesn't have a will or a trust, Georgia is now going to decide what happens to his half of the house. If he has 5 or 6 kids and a legal spouse, not someone that you're just shacking up with, got to be legal now, but Georgia's going to slice up his 50% of the house among those heirs. And what if you haven't, there's children that now come out the closet, my mother said Denzel was my daddy. It's going to be some fights over who are getting a slice of that 50% of the house. Now, if your deed says Denzel and Sharon with rights of survivorship, whichever one dies first, the survivor gets the whole house. And then people didn't know. I said, okay, if you got a deed or even to buy a house, make sure that tagline is there, because if not, you need to have a will so you say who gets your half of the house versus Georgia stepping in and slicing it up among spouse, children. If no spouse, no children, your parents, are they still living? If no parents, sisters and brothers, no sisters and brothers, nieces, nephews, it goes all the way down this line. But now you can see the mess, because if everybody doesn't like each other, they're not talking, the children from the first marriage don't like the children from the second marriage, they can't even agree on what to do with the house. So it becomes a mess. So that's the first step. Check your deed. Does it say the two people who own the house, if it's married, that there is rights of survivorship in that deed? Because if not, you need to get your estate plan done.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, honestly, could you also couple that with explaining kind of the toll? So Ms. Sharon talked a little bit about that emotional toll, but there's also a financial toll to that.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that people don't realize. Sometimes they get caught up in the fact that estate planning costs. It costs to plan, but it costs more to not plan, and I don't think they really understand that. The caveat that I wanted to add, because you're totally right, obviously, but a lot of times we don't think about blended family situations, because I have people that will come to me and want me to add people on the deed. They want them put as joint tenants with rights of survivorship. It may be a married couple, all that's well and good, but what's important to me is to make sure that I'm educating people about what they're doing, because they may have gotten that information and it sounds right. But just as another example, when it comes to blended families, you may have a husband and wife that they may have children together, but they each or one may have children outside of that marriage. They may want to make sure that their children outside of that marriage receives part of the inheritance of that property. If you add joint tenancy with rights of survivorship automatically without thinking or understanding the consequences of that, you could be disinheriting your children from the inheritance of that property. So that if one person, like you said, married couple, joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, if one of those spouses dies, the other one would automatically own it. If they are tenants in common, which is the other example that you gave, then that means each married person, each individual out of that couple owns 50%. Well, if I'm getting married, I may want to make sure that my children who are not the biological children of my spouse to inherit a portion or percentage or something from my inheritance. So that involves proper estate planning and counseling, because you want to make sure that you're thinking about all of that. So it's really just not a matter, it's kind of like what we understand in the legal world, that people grab onto some information. Oh, that's good, I want to do that. Honey, we should do that. Yes, we should do that. But we're not getting proper consultation or complete consultation to make sure that we understand the ramifications of any one decision.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've taken away from being in this world, at least for a little bit, is that what the state of Georgia is going to have happen if you pass isn't always common sense. And in fact, what we're hearing, common sense means different things for different people. Mm-hmm. So you might think, why on earth? Of course, me and my sisters lived here, and of course, Sharon's going to take it. But the state doesn't know that, and the only way they know that is that you tell them that. And so make sure that your common sense is the same as the state's common sense by doing the planning, being intentional, and writing it down.
Yeah, there's nuances in the law. I always tell people that. So just to your point, what seems like common sense to us just naturally, just know there's nuances in the law. I even understand that as a professional, and I'm sure you do too. If there's a component of something that I'm handling that involves another area of practice, I don't just assume, even as an attorney, that, oh, that makes sense if this goes this way or that way. I'm going to contact the attorney who's a profession in that space, just to make sure that I'm handling, the situation properly in all fronts. So just always remember there's nuances, and what you learn on social media does not address those nuances 9 times out of 10.
Speaking of the state kind of stepping in and making a decision around what happens to properties if there's not a will, could you, on a very high level, if this is the first time someone's heard the word probate or heard probate court mentioned, can you kind of give a definition of that?
Well, that's the thing. It's like when someone dies, a legal process has to take place so that someone can now execute documents and sign on behalf of the owners. And let me just ask you this. There's some crazy statistics when people don't get their affairs in order. 61% of Caucasians, 67% of English-speaking Asians, 77% of African Americans, and 82% of Hispanics die without a will. Wow. So now, we want to keep avoiding that conversation. We don't know when our second date is going to occur. But shouldn't you decide what you want to have happen to your stuff versus not knowing and not being a participant? You may be flipping over in your grave when you see what's going on now regarding your stuff. Because when you do not have a will or an estate plan in place, some person, or maybe more than one person, comes to the probate court asking to be named the administrator over your estate. Now, how many of you in the room are private individuals? You don't want everybody all in your business. Is that most of us? Well, guess what? After that process starts, we have to put a notice in the legal newspaper for 4 consecutive weeks to let the world know you died without a will. And do you have an estate plan? Or whatever? No, do I have a claim against your estate because you owe me money? Or I'm an heir, I'm a child. So now we all know what's in that you didn't put your stuff in order, and now here comes the fight in probate court because one or more people may step up and say, I want to be the administrator, because they get paid out of your estate to do this job, to, file reports with the court, to, okay, who am I going to give different things to, who gets the car, who gets the bank accounts, again, based on the heirs, the law that Georgia's put in place. But it can be rather ugly and time-consuming, because it's not going to be the person died on Monday and the hearing is next week. It may be a year from now, depending on the scheduling and the court calendar. So what's happening during that time period? And like I said, I sat in on some of the ugliest fights. I mean, real ugly.
And it's when you think people get along, when money's involved, it changes things. I can't tell you how many people I have talked to. I may be doing a real estate transaction and a probate matter comes up because there's actually the deceased on title. And the person who signed the contract actually thought they had authority because mama always trusted me to handle affairs. And at the end of the day, when you get kind of under the weeds of everything, nobody in the family wanted that person to handle anything, so it becomes a whole big issue now that they're trying to sell the house. And one of the things that really highlighted for me, like I said, I've been practicing for well over 25 years, but during COVID, that is the time frame when things just, the light bulb really went off for me about how critical estate planning, particularly trust, and the importance of thinking about trust, at least being aware of trust for people in the community. Because that was a time, and I'm sure you can attest, where everyone in this room, one thing we share in common is during COVID, we all learned what can happen when the world is not prepared. And what was happening for me in transactions that I was dealing with, real estate transactions, is that when someone died, normally probate could take maybe like 3 to 4 months with a good county, all things being equal and all of that. I would tell people 90 to 120 days. But there was a time frame when the courts were like, we don't know when we're going to be able to get back and going. And when we do, it's going to be extremely delayed. So imagine the scenario. Someone dies. Nobody in the family can really pay for this mortgage, but yet the mortgage is still going to be due. And if we're dealing with 90, 120 days, 6 to 9 months, sometimes a year when COVID, what's going to happen to that house if the mortgage company doesn't want to work with you? And they have an option. They're not required to work with you. During COVID, there was a little more concession around that because, like I said, the world was dealing with this. No one knew what to do. But if you didn't have anybody in the family who, one, would stand up or could stand up, just from capacity of understanding how all this goes, they may not be able to handle that properly, and potentially you could lose the house. Something that someone worked so hard to gain and to be able to pass on, or wanted to, even though they didn't properly plan, but in their heart wanted to pass on to people. Because of the probate courts being delayed, it could cause an issue.
And let me just add another little silent. How many of you know what's getting ready to happen on October the 7th? Next Tuesday. There's going to be people, the tax commissioner is going to be auctioning off people's property at the courthouse steps because they haven't been paying the taxes. Mm-hmm. So let's say grandmother had a property, either, wherever they may be at DeKalb, Fulton, other states, wherever. But I looked at the list, both for Fulton and DeKalb, and there are over 100 properties on both lists that are going to be auctioned off on the courthouse steps because they're not paying the taxes. So again, someone is not following through with mom or grandmama's or whoever's property, and because nobody stepped up to be the administrator over the estate, the family's still arguing, they're not talking, nobody is checking the mail. So now and I encourage you all, why don't you just go and see how that process looks. People have their lawn chairs, so they're gonna be out there all day. And some people owe maybe less than $1,000 of taxes, but that property is getting ready to get sold on the courthouse steps. Now, if you, the owner, there's some time for you to recover the property back. But again, it's another problem because somebody's not taking care of the legal issues regarding the property. And it is very interesting because I just kind of looked at one when I was in DeKalb, and I said, how are all these people coming from? And I just went outside, and it was hundreds of people bidding on those properties. But here's it is, if it was your property, your parents' property, and you got some legal stuff to take care of, there's a time for you to recover the property back after it's sold on the courthouse steps. But if you're not paying attention to the mail, not trying to still get legal stuff in order, that person who bidded on your property is just checking off dates on the calendar, because then it's going to be too late for you to get the property back.
Right.
And I think when I looked at the DeKalb County list, they actually had the names of the owners, how much money they owe, the property address. So you may want to go check a look and make sure it's none of your family members on that list before Tuesday.
Yeah.
And if you do see somebody's property that's related to you, you need to have some conversations. And even if you don't like your family members, somebody got to have some common sense to start the conversation to get stuff in order. Or here is wealth going to someone else that people have put their life into.
I don't want to cut you off, but I feel like you did draw a really good line, the two of you did, between how quickly properties that were meant to be inherited and be a blessing for a family and passed on quickly become foreclosures and auctioned off to anyone who's willing to pay those taxes back. I don't know if, Colin, you had anything to add to that before we shift over to kind of structural barriers to protecting ourselves.
No, definitely. So I came into this topic of heirs property really in two ways in my work, working on the housing team at the city. The first was I was actually looking at the question, when do code enforcement violations become a problem? So I was looking at all of the code enforcement data that we had, and I noticed that heirs property was way overrepresented from other things. If you look at, maybe it starts with you didn't cut your grass, or, some shingles are falling down, and as that escalates and it goes all the way to an eventual demolition, I was looking, okay, which properties are actually getting demolished? And it was something like, I picked one year about 10 years ago, and it was about 45% of the properties that had gone all the way to demolition were actually heirs properties. And so that says to me one of two things. Either folks are choosing not to intervene, or they can't. And one of the reasons that I realized that they can't is that it's hard to get financing, or maybe you want to sell the house, but it's hard to sell the house because you have heirs property. It's hard to get the loan that you need to fix the roof. It's harder and harder and harder to do these things. And what we know, and goes to the tax sale as well, is that big problems don't go away with time, and if it's harder to do something, they just get bigger, and the consequences, like the tax sale or like a demolition, come a lot faster than you think. And so heirs property I noticed was compounding that and just making it more and more difficult to upkeep a house, even if you wanted to.
Thank you for sharing that. So before we have our panelists offer some resources that they really champion or think are very important things that people can be doing today, I did want to let you all know that if you had questions, we do have volunteers with postcards that you're able to go ahead and write your questions on. So while they're listing their resources, go ahead and write your questions, and then we'll give ourselves 5 minutes or so at the end to answer some general questions, okay? So back to you all. I just want to give you time to champion any resources you think people should know about, or just steps that people should be taking right now when they leave here that maybe is not, like you said, like a huge thing that you're waiting a long time to get done, but is a small step you can take to start preparing.
I think just being right here and the resources that are in this room are enough to get you started to learn. There's attorneys here, there's nonprofits here who focus in this space, in addition to HouseATL highlighting this. But share this information with those in your family, your friends, and your sphere of influence, because this is a topic that takes time to learn and understand. The beauty of it, though, to get help, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know where to get help, but you have to act. And I think the fact that this HouseATL is putting on this event, and the supportive vendors who are here in this room and professionals are a great way to get everybody's information so that you can connect to other events that might be available. It's hard for me to say, go online and things like that. I'm always reluctant to tell people to do that if I'm unsure, but I think that here is a great start to pick up those resources and use this as a launching pad to learn about additional resources that you can gather for yourself and your loved ones and friends.
What about you, Sharon?
A couple of things. Everyone in this room, I think, has good common sense, right? Or you wouldn't be here. Get you a spiral-bound notebook and start making a list of all of your relatives. If you got to go back to mom and dad, grandparents, great-grandparents, and start maintaining that family tree, because again, let's say you're the person that's going to go to the court to be named the administrator over grandparents' estate so that you can preserve it. You don't want to not serve someone because you don't like that cousin. You don't want to open up the door for somebody to challenge it later. Oh, I wasn't, included in the list, and nobody, told me about this action. But somebody got to step up and say, I'm going to do some things that make sense. You don't want your grandparents or your parents or even your own. If you don't have your stuff in order, you need to get your stuff in order too. As mentioned earlier, I'm an attorney. I've written now about 13 plus books, and I have a free ebook, Help Me Get My Stuff in Order.com. So you can start thinking about this subject and not keep procrastinating because somebody didn't wake up today. We don't know when that date that we're going to transition, so you need to have your stuff in order, but somebody has to step up and have that conversation with mom and dad, and ask dad and mom, are there any other siblings that we don't know about? I remember when Prince died, they still got kids coming out saying, well, my mother said he was my daddy, because everybody now wants a slice of the pie. And if you know who they are, put the feelings aside, but do the right thing and contact them and find out. Now, sometimes you may have to do some DNA tests to say, are you really related? But you want to get things in order and have the right people in the room so that you all can make some discussions versus letting the court make decisions, because you may not like what the judge issues in those cases, but the judge still has to follow what's on the books in the state versus you all coming together and reaching some family conclusions about what you want to have happen.
Awesome.
Yes, so I would just add a few concrete points to that. One, if you own a home already, whether you bought it or you inherited it, go check your deed in the county with the county clerk. Just get a copy of it. Some counties, I know Fulton County has a program, I think it's called, don't quote me, but call the clerk and ask. But you can get automatic notifications if there are changes to your deed. So let's say you did inherit a property and it is still a tenancy in common situation where maybe it's you and two siblings who own it, and then maybe one of them passes and their 4 or 5 kids, 3 or 4 kids, however many, have inherited a portion of the property, and one of them decides to sell that portion. Well, you'll be notified about it right away. So getting those automatic updates from the clerk's office, it's a simple process. There might be a small fee attached, but it's definitely worth it, because the sooner you know when something goes wrong, the better. I would say make sure that the tax assessor has the right address of the person who's going to be paying the taxes and responsible for the home, whether you own it now or whether you've inherited it already and you're already in an heirs property situation, because they will send you mail to that address, and that way you don't have to read the newspaper. I don't read those legal newspapers every week, and you don't have to either, because you'll get the mail directly. And if you do have a will, obviously getting a will, doing your estate planning now if you own a home, if you're thinking about buying a home, have that be a part of your checklist. But additionally, if you have one, we know a lot of famous, very wealthy people who left it in the couch cushions.
Aretha.
That's right. It doesn't help you there, so make sure that you're also filing it. You can file it so that it doesn't get unsealed until after you pass if you want to maintain that privacy, but make sure that you're going to the clerk, you're filing the things, and you're getting the information about yourself as well.
And let me just add one quickly. Get a fireproof container at your house, and you're keeping all these documents in so that you're protecting them and that your family members know where those documents are. Because even with insurance, their insurance companies are sitting on money because nobody has come to claim it because they didn't even know that granddaddy had insurance and I'm named as the beneficiary. But if there are deeds, if there are other documents, make sure that they are secure at your house in a fireproof container or a safe deposit box, but make sure people know where those documents are being kept.
Perfect, thank you. I do want to give some time to answer some of the questions that we got.
She has
I
a
think
stack
Ashley's
of
going to come up and read a few of them.
Yes, thank y'all so much for this session, and I want to give a round of applause to y'all for giving your expertise, wonderful information, and LaJoy for helping us ground this conversation, okay? So we have another activity to do after Q&A, so I'm going to try to get through as many questions as we possibly can, but if you can kind of keep your responses like 20 seconds or less, okay? So the first one is, what does the cost of estate planning look like?
Say that?
What the cost of estate planning, what does that look like?
It depends on what you want. Do you want just a will? Do you want a trust? Do you need other documents? You need a healthcare directive? You need a power of attorney? You can see me and other lawyers, and we can kind of go through what those costs look like. And sometimes people say, well, I can go online and do my own will. Okay, but if you are going to do it yourself, you better know what you're doing, because you're saying I'm my own attorney. And because probate court will not give you exact, information and stuff, because we have to stay neutral.
So basically, it's kind of like, it depends on what you're looking for. Exactly.
It depends
so it's
on
not
what
a
you're looking
set
for.
number.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can tell you trust costs more in the thousands. Wills will be, depending on the type of will, hundreds, okay? Because like she said, it can vary depending on what you need, but just to give you baseline.
And I'll add, keep an ear out for free wills clinics. Those do exist. I know the city has been putting them on. We'll have another one on November 8th. If you're interested and live in the city of Atlanta, come talk to me and I can give you information about that. But Atlanta Legal Aid, others put on free wills clinics as well. So keep an ear out for those.
All right, if you're getting married and your future spouse already has a home, how do you ensure you're the person to inherit the home in the event your spouse passes?
So the deed is just in the husband's name right now. You're getting ready to marry him. You are, and does he have a will or an estate that he's saying who's going to get his house? So if he does not, then Georgia wants to know who are his legal heirs, the legal spouse, how many children, and Georgia will slice up the ownership percentage of that house among those individuals. The wife, if there are more than 2 kids, she gets no less than 1/3. But how many kids does he have? They're going to split up the remaining 2/3 among all the children.
All right, what happens after a year when someone buys the property at a tax sale if the owner wants to keep the property but they don't have enough money?
I can jump in here. Tax sales are messy things. The best bet is to avoid one, because if you don't prevent the home from going to tax sale, now the price you have to pay to fix the issue is not how much you owed in taxes, it's how much the person bid at the tax sale, and that's a much bigger number most of the time. I had a neighbor, he had about $10,000 in unpaid taxes. He didn't know about it, he didn't get the right notice. The house sold for $160,000 at tax sale. So that's the price he had to pay in cash. After a year, you have a year to do that at a minimum per state law. Now, you might have more time, but after a year, the person who bought it can say, I would like my house now, and they can do something what's called, they can do the right to redeem, or they can foreclose on the right to redeem is what it's called.
Yes.
But basically, they can finalize the foreclosure process, and you are now a tenant, and you can now be evicted because it's not your home anymore. So that's what starts to happen after 12 months. But fix the problem beforehand because it's much cheaper then.
Yes.
All right, what are some alternatives to keeping your property as heirs property?
Alternatives to keeping it?
If you want to keep, I guess they're asking, if you want to keep the property and it is heirs property, what can you do? What are some options?
You've got to clear up whatever the issue is, because heirs property just means 1, 2, or 100 people have an interest, so that needs to be clarified. The first thing I would do is get a title search of the property to make sure that the interests can be confirmed, and then from there, they can be given advice on what steps need to be taken to clear it. But the title search is paramount, because sometimes interests are not addressed in a chain of title that otherwise people might think would have been.
And if the property is still in grandparents' names or parents' name, someone needs to step up and go to probate court to be named the administrator, so that legally they can do some things taking care of the property. but that's a court procedure. That's why I say you got to serve all the heirs. Are they agreeing that Susie in hearing? So that step up and take the legal ownership to do the work of that heir's property. Take the legal ownership to do the work of that heir's property.
Heirs, there's no estate planning, but there may be a will sitting, so the other
Children seen in relationship to heirs property, adopted versus stepchildren.
if they're legally adopted, then they are children and considered heirs. But not that you call this person your child and they for 40 years. No, they're not legally, it has to go through a legal proceeding to be confirmed an heir.
Because here's the thing, the children are going to fight over how many people are going to get a slice of the pie. I was sitting in on a case where one of the sons got on the witness stand and said, well, Daddy told me, he wasn't Susie's daddy.